Hello, today we're going to learn how to make a basic reflection tessellation in Tinkercad. This is a fun little math slash art type activity. But this video will also showcase some pretty good tools in Tinkercad if you're just looking to learn about some basic things and ideas in Tinkercad. This video is quite a good way to learn how to do some of those techniques. So let's go ahead and get started. Give you a quick basics of Tinkercad for those of you that are new to it. What we have right off the bat is our work plane. Tinkercad is a three-dimensional CAD modeling software that we're going to be developing with today. So you notice that as I rotate the work plane around, I have a flat bed that I'm going to be placing three-dimensional objects on, a lot like a 3D printer would be. A couple ways to rotate around that bed. I was right-clicking to go ahead and rotate around the work plane right here. But you can also use this nice little cube up the top here, and just by clicking on this and rotating it around, we'll rotate the bed around. You can also click on any of the sides of the cube, and it'll get you to a specific view that you might want to see. Now, what you also might want to do is you want to get back to where we started, and that is this home button right here. And if I click on the home view, it'll get us back to the original starting spot of our work plane. Let's go ahead and drag an object onto the screen, and then I could show a couple more tools that we're going to be using today. We want to create a tessellation tile, which is going to be a flatter square shape that we're going to start with. So what I'm going to use to start my tessellation is just a simple box. Now, a box is something that most of us can use to start a lot of our projects that we want to do in Tinkercad. This is a real basic shape, but it can be turned into a lot of different things. So in order to get a box on the screen, we just click on it, drag it over onto the screen, put it somewhere in the middle of the screen, and I can move it anywhere I want on the screen. Notice that you see some of the dimensions do show up. We are going to be changing the dimensions many times in Tinkercad with whatever shapes we're putting on here. So it's very important for us to see the dimensions that we have here. When I click off the box, the dimensions go away. When I click back on the box, they are not always going to show up unless I point to some of the specific tools on the side of the box. Now, I want to show you one of the most important tools I think in Tinkercad is what's called the ruler tool. And that is this tool right up here on our right-hand part of the screen. Looks like a little right angle ruler. When I click on that and drag it onto the screen, I'm going to place a ruler anywhere I want down here. I'll go ahead and put it about right there. And you notice if I click back on the object that's on the screen, whatever object I'm looking at, all the dimensions stay up on the screen. That's really important for us because these are the things that I do want to change in Tinkercad. So we're going to go ahead and play around with that a little bit right now and explain some of the dimensions. And one's kind of a little different here, and I'm going to show you how to fix that too. So first comes first, I do want to make a flatter box or a tile type shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my length and width dimensions to not 20 by 20, and these are measured in millimeters today. I'm going to make them 50 by 50. And all you do to change them is click in the box and where the number is and retype the number you would like. You can get as detailed as you want, but I'm going to be real basic with 50 by 50. I'm also going to make this a thinner tile. I'm not going to have it 20 millimeters. I'm going to make it 5, and it's going to be a flat tile. Now, those are the dimensions of the actual tile. You notice there's another dimension here, and it showed up as a 10. I don't know why it started as 10. I might have bumped something as I was kind of clicking here. But what that fourth dimension is how far the part is off the bed of the work plane. Now, we don't want it to be flying up in midair like that. That's what that 10 represents. It's 10 millimeters high. I want to make that flat on the bed so I can change this to 0. And when I do that, my tile is then flat on the bed, which is exactly where I want it to be. Now, notice when I click back on this, that dimension comes back up. I can make that higher. You might want that higher for other things you're doing. Maybe you're layering an object on top of each other. That would be very helpful. Now, we have our tile. There are two other dimensions on the screen that are very handy for us to use. And they are these two little green arrows or lines that you see here. What these are representing is how far our object is from the origin of our ruler, which is essentially an X and Y axis, or X axis and Y axis. And what we're seeing here, this 99 and 77, is how many millimeters the bottom left-hand corner of our part is from the origin. I believe, actually it is now what we had here. Okay, there are two ways that we can measure where the part is from the origin. We can measure it from the midpoint of the part, or we can measure it from the end point, which is the bottom left-hand corner. I'm going to use the end point right now. And right now it is saying that we are 74 millimeters on our X and 52 millimeters on our Y. I would like the part to be right at 0, 0. So just like I changed my dimensions before, I'm going to change those dimensions from 74 to 0, and 52 to 0. And now my part is right at the origin. This is very helpful because what we're going to do here is we are going to add some parts to this to tessellate this object. And I want them to be in a specific location or coordinates connected to that part. And you're going to see how we do that here in a few minutes. So now we have our tile, and we're going to tessellate. And what tessellate means is I'm going to change that object by cutting out or adding to one or two of the sides of this tile that we have here, the square tile. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use a different shape. The shape I am going to use is another really important tool in Tinkercad. I call it my polygon tool. It's this tool right here. And what this tool does, when I drag this shape onto the screen, it shows that I have a polygon type prism on the shape on the screen. This is a 6-sided figure, so it's a hexagonal prism that I have. But the great thing about the polygon tool is I can change it from whatever sides I want. I can go from a 3-sided figure, obviously a triangle, all the way up to a 12-sided figure, which is more cylindrical, almost looks like a cylinder. But if we zoomed in a little bit, you can see that it does have some more sides to it. Okay, so we're going to stick to that 6-sided figure. I like that one that we're going to use. And we're going to use this to add to the bottom of our tile and the top. And what we're going to do is we're going to do two different things. We're going to add a piece to the bottom and cut out a piece to the top, or vice versa. We'll decide as we kind of go along here. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is I want to make my hexagonal prism here. I want to make this into the same size as our square. So simply, I'm going to make it 50 on the width, and I'm going to keep it at 20. I'm going to keep it at 20 because I don't have to make it as big as a square. I just want a little part at the bottom. And I am going to make it the same height as 5. So I have another little small tile we're going to add to the bottom. Notice my 0 tile is, 0 is it's flat on the bed, and that's where I want it to be. Now, what I'm going to do is, gosh, I don't know why this always has been flipping back to negative of late on Tinkercad. A little glitch there in Tinkercad that I'll figure out, but that's okay. I'm going to take the square and the hexagon, and I'm going to put them together. And what I'm going to do, instead of just moving them, I can't just move them over here and kind of line them up however I want, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and line them up using my dimensions. Notice that I have my dimensions showing up for how far this part is from the origin. I can go ahead and change this. And what I want to do is I want this green line not to be 143. I want it to line up right on the y-axis here. I'm going to change this to 0. And it's going to shoot right over to where I want it. Now, this one's a little tricky. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to a top view of my part. And I'm going to scroll back out a little bit so we can see it. And what I want to see with this is I'd like this piece, the bottom blue hexagon, to be about halfway up into the square. So what we have to do is think about how tall is my hexagon. Well, it's 20 millimeters tall. That's what I used. So I want 10 millimeters poking out and 10 millimeters poking up. So I'm going to change this coordinate, the negative 34. I'm going to change it to negative 10. And when I do that, it puts it exactly where I want that part to be. I want it to be halfway into the square and halfway out. And if we zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see what shape that kind of makes. That's a really cool kind of shape that we're going to have there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the home button here, and you can kind of see they're both back together. And what I want to do now is we are going to tessellate. And what tessellate means is I'm going to take the shape that I have on the bottom, and I'm going to move it to the top, but I'm going to keep this over on the bottom as well. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to hit the duplicate button, which is this little button here at the top of the screen. When I duplicate, it doesn't look like anything happens. But if I just hit the arrow button on my keyboard a couple of times, you can see the shape is duplicated and it's moving. Now, what I'd like this shape to be is I'd like it to be sticking about halfway out of the top and halfway in. So what dimension do we think this should be? Well, if this is 20 high and I want the bottom corner to be 10 in, I'm going to go think of this was at 50. I'm going to subtract 10 and I'm going to make this 40. I'm going to click on that dimension. And I have now the hexagon poking out of the top 10, poking out of the bottom 10, and I have a new shape here. Kind of in Tinkercad, this is how we build things. We build shapes together and form new shapes, and that's what we have. Now, when we're tessellating, one of the two shapes has to be a cutout, meaning it's going to be a negative space. So this is the really nice idea in Tinkercad that I can make one of my blue hexagons into a cutout shape. And let's go ahead and cut out the top shape. So we're going to go ahead and click on that top blue shape, and simply over on the right hand side I have a two little things. One says solid, one says hole. If I click on the hole, it changes it into negative space. And then what I can do is I can group all three of my shapes together. Now notice I have two hexagons and a square, but if I group them all together by doing two different things, I can either hold the shift key down and click on each individual object, or I can draw a box around the three, and I've selected all those objects, and I can group them. And the group button is this nice little tool right here. If you point to it, it'll just say group, or Control G does the same. When I click on that, I now have a new shape. Looks like kind of like a little arrow. Could be maybe a coffee cup type shape, but I have created a very basic tessellation. I could repeat this object many times, and it would be a new tile as I go forward. Okay. Now, that is the first part of our tessellation. We're going to make what's called a reflection tessellation. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut out and add a shape on the two sides that we have not done anything with, the left and right. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to, again, use our polygon tool, except this time we're going to use a triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce that back to 3 sides. And I have a nice triangle. Now you notice the triangle has some pretty crazy dimensions right now. We're going to go ahead and make them real nice and simple. We're going to make it 20 by 20. Okay, real easy. And we're going to, again, make that triangle 5 millimeters high. So it is the same height as the one that we have over here. Now I'm going to click back on our original shape here, just make sure that all dimensions are okay. And what we're going to do here is we're going to then move our triangle back over into where we want it to be in here, in the new shape. And remember, we're going to tessellate. We're going to put a triangle sticking out of one side, and then we're going to cut a triangle out of the other side. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, use my axes tool because I really like this. This is a good math lesson for all of us to understand where that I want this to be. I want this triangle that is 20 millimeters wide. I want 10 of it sticking out of the triangle and 10 sticking in. We're going to split it right in half. So if I want that, this piece here has to be at -10. When I do that, it moves it over right where I want it to be on that edge of that axis. Now, here's the cool thing about this part of our tessellation. This piece right here, where it lines up on the side here, up and down, it does not matter where it is. So we can go ahead and pick anything we want here. I'm going to go ahead and, in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the triangle, and I'm going to move it down where I might want to put it. Okay, I like it right about there. Okay, maybe a little bit up from there. Okay, right about 5. Okay, it says 5 on our axis. That's fine. We're going to leave it there. Now, that's our triangle that we're going to either cut out or leave in. We haven't decided yet. We'll decide here in a second. But the other part we have to do is we have to click on the triangle and duplicate it. So we're going to duplicate that triangle. And again, when I duplicate, it doesn't look like anything happened, but it did. It copied the triangle, and we are going to move it to the other side. Now think about the same piece, okay? I want this piece to have half the triangle hanging out, half it hanging in. So where do I want this coordinate to be? If this is 50 wide and I want 10 inside of it, I want it to be 50 minus 10, which is 40. And when I move that over, it moves that triangle right to the edge where I want it to be. And again, I can move this up or down anywhere I want it. Now there's one more trick that I have to do. This is a reflection tessellation. So instead of having just the same shape sticking out of both sides, what we're going to do is we are going to reflect this triangle or flip it along the axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it upside down. So I'm going to click on the triangle, and there's a great tool in Tinkercad for this. It's this little mirror tool. And when I click on the mirror tool, it looks like 2 little triangles along an axis. When I click on it, it gives me 3 arrows. And if I point to the arrows, you're seeing what it's actually going to do. Okay? And what I want it to do is I want it to flip the triangle. So I'm going to click on the up and down arrow. We're going to flip it along that axis. And it flips the triangle. It shows us on the other side. So I now have a triangle pointing down, triangle pointing up. And that is going to cause that reflection tessellation. Now, our last step to create our tile, our real basic tile, is to pick which one do I want to be cut out and which one do I want to stay as a solid object. So it really does not matter. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the one on the right. And again, the same process. We're going to click on that triangle. We're going to click it as a whole. And now we have one solid, one as a whole. And we're going to do that last little group step, which is actually very satisfying. When I highlight both triangles and the main piece that we had already created, I hit the little group button again, and I now have a tessellation. Now it's kind of like a nifty little kind of shape. Sometimes you create a tessellation and it kind of looks like something. This might look like a little coffee mug maybe, or maybe it's a little face that you could look at with a little cutout, who knows. But as you kind of cut some things out, you'll figure this out. Last thing I'd like to show you is how do we make it a tessellation on the screen? Well, simply we click on the object that we have our tile and we duplicate it. So I'll duplicate it once, just like I did with the triangles, and I can move that over. Okay. Now notice that it does not fit in the tessellation. Okay. Because I shifted that over that way because I have to reflect the new tile. So I'm going to click on the same reflect button, and I'm going to flip my tile, and then it fits in as a tile right to left. Okay. Now, if I want to go up and down, though, if I duplicate, I can make my tile translate up and down. It fits that way. And we're going to click one more time, and we're going to duplicate, and I'm going to shift over this way. Notice that my tile does not fit. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hit the little translate button here, the mirror button. I'm going to flip it over, and I now have a tile that can tessellate in there. And I have a fun little pattern that we can do. Now, my favorite thing to do once I create these patterns is I like to change the colors of it to really make it kind of colorful. We have some fun with it. I click on a pattern. I can come up here where it says solid, and I could pick whatever color I want. So I could go ahead and pick green, and I could make this other one green. And I have kind of like a fun little pattern. You could do your whole page that way. I'm going to go ahead and close my roller off so you can see it. And I'm going to center this on the page. And we can kind of scroll up to the top and see there is our final tessellation pattern. So we learned a lot in this video. This should be a good way for anybody that wants to try to make a tessellation. You could do that. You could follow all my exact steps and do it exactly the same way, or get creative, make it your own, see what you can come up with. And also, hopefully you can take some of the other ideas that I gave you within Tinkercad to start your building on anything else you might want to do as well. So good luck with that, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.